Back inside the toolbox, I, for one, am very grateful that a bunch of actors got together and sang Imagine in their cell phones a couple of weeks ago. That really helped. Thank you. We're inside 30 minutes commercial-free on the toolbox. There's no more borders on Tinder, so you can think you're in love worldwide. Here's Eddie Money on the toolbox.
Ooh, something's got a hold on me now. It's a feeling, burning like a love on fire. Hold me tight, babe. Don't leave me by myself tonight. 'Cause I don't think I can make it through the night. I think I'm in love. Am I lost enough?
From Adam's house, and Brian's house, and Gina's house, this is the Adam Carolla Show. Adam's guest today, Dennis Quaid. With Gina Grad on news, Bald Brian on sound effects, we'll play the Rotten Tomatoes game, and the CEO of Chromadex, Rob Freed, drops by to talk about cellular health. And now, always ready to fume on Zoom, Adam Carolla.
Yeah, get it on. Got to get it on a choice, but to get on a mandate. Get it on. Thanks for tuning in, and thanks for sharing. We love that about you, right, Gina Grad?
That's right.
Handball, Brian.
Look at the size of that boy's head.
Yeah, Rob was a producer on that film.
Executive producer of So I Married an Axe Murderer. Uneven film, but the parts that are good are fantastic.
Because it makes you crave it fortnightly, you smartass.
Yeah, a lot of laughs in that film, and I would take that was like a relationship with a crazy person, but great lovemaking, and then
Yes.
blow out arguments. But I would take that 6 months over just the fair to Midland relationship.
That's a huge noggin.
Yeah, he's produced a lot of really interesting films and has a lot to say about wellness and your immune system, which I keep now thinking about when it comes to this COVID-19 business we're dealing with. So we'll get into that. Some interesting stuff he's bringing to the table. I was thinking, I was talking to Chris about Gina Grad and Nancy Grace, and we don't have to step right into it, but it's been too long for me.
Well,
even though
she's
it's only
had
been 10 minutes.
I know she's had some thoughts about Carol Baskin and Joe Exotic from Tiger King. I don't know what else she's been spouting off about lately.
Well, I hope that we have a clip we can play, but we don't need to get to it immediately.
Okay. We'll have it holstered.
I was watching Real Time with Bill Maher over the weekend, and I realized we seem to be in different places a lot of time, but we do land in the same. We come at things from different directions, but we land in the same place a lot on a lot of societal things, like blame China and or hey, news, stop scaring the shit out of everybody all the time. You're freaking everyone out. And he finished his show last week. He finished it with a kind of a blame China angle. And this week he ended it with a, hey, news, stop freaking everyone out. But the thing that was funny about it is I had put together this sort of news, stop freaking everyone out little montage a couple of weeks before. We just never really had a chance to play it. So Chris had been sitting on it, I think from the Saturday before, when I was just watching MSNBC, their weekend, I think it's called Weekend Live. I can't recall. So anyway, their weekend show. And it was just that doom and gloom. And now there's information, fine. And then there's information that's scary information, but it's still information. Like, what are you going to do? Your doctor tells Brian you got a brain tumor and it's inoperable. That's
Stop
information.
scaring me.
It's
Stop
scary
scaring me, dude.
information.
I don't
but
accept that.
He doesn't drop a book right when he says it and, shine a flashlight under his chin. He just gives you the information. And my thing is there's enough scary information out there that we don't have to cap it. I can say, hey, Brian, you have a brain tumor. And then I don't have to pause and go, things will never be the same again. I can just say you have
Life
this.
as you know it is about
Right.
to change forever.
So I think Why don't we play Bill? We'll play Bill's first for some reason, and I guess it doesn't matter if we play mine first or Bill's first. But this was Bill, and I disagree with many of the things he says, but I do agree with many of the things he says, which is fine. I don't know why.
Is that
You
allowed?
you'd be an idiot if you agreed with everything that Bill Maher said. That wouldn't benefit you. But if you disagreed with everything he said, that would not benefit you either. So why not just pick and choose those things? Why would you have to completely throw the Bill Maher out with the bathwater? Or why get into his tent and listen to his gospel on everything?
Right.
Listen to him on some things and do that with everybody.
It's good philosophy for life, man.
By the way. Yeah. All right. So let's see. We'll play his. Chris chopped it up a little bit because I think it was 6 minutes long or something. But you get the idea. Here we go.
And finally, new rule. Now that we're starting to see some hope in all this, don't hope shame me. The problem with nonstop gloom and doom is it gives Trump the chance to play the optimist. And optimists tend to win American elections. Last month, the Washington Post ran the headline, "It feels like a war zone," with this picture. This is not a war zone. This is a man with a box of eggs. And I've never seen a war zone with this much bacon. Or how about this one? Horrifying simulation reveals the dangers of jogging during the coronavirus pandemic. Look, this virus is easy to catch, but if you can't avoid it jogging, you can't outrun much. 2 weeks ago, Inside Edition said 76,000 in the world had died, so some are making comparisons to the apocalypse. The apocalypse? Really? Because most of us are sitting at home smoking delivery weed and binge watching a show about a gay zookeeper. Another recent Times headline was, "It's terrifying. Millions more out of work." What the fuck is "it's terrifying" doing in a headline? Granted, it's a quote, but who are they quoting? Trump? Fauci? Stephen King? No, they're quoting an event planner in North Hollywood. No offense to the event planners of the world. It's amazing what you people can do with pine cones and silver spray paint. But why are you in my headline? How about this? Just tell me millions are out of work without the flashlight under the chin, and I'll decide how I feel about it. The media also seems obsessed with finding young people who've died of COVID-19. The Washington Post says there's 759 under 50 years old. Horrible, of course. Then I looked up how many under 50 died of the flu last year. Almost 3,000. So all this misery from distancing did some good. Can I be happy about that? Death is terrible, of course, no matter how it comes. I'm against it, and I don't care who knows it. But giving a proper perspective isn't a cover-up of the truth. It is the truth. Sudden, dramatic deaths like plane crashes, shark attacks, tornadoes, mass shootings, terrorism, awful as they are, kill far less than seasonal flu or even hospital-acquired infections may very well kill more than coronavirus. 99,000 of them last year. 50,000 die of nephritis every year. And I don't even know what that is. We need the news to calm down and treat us like adults. Trump calls you fake news. Don't make him be right.
The great Bill Maher, the sometimes great Bill Maher. Yeah, it's and also, again, you're going to hurt your brand, I think, news-wise, if you go full doom and gloom all the time, because I am now sort of impervious to the real doom and gloom because all I hear is doom and gloom. So I'm never sure what the real doom or when to react when there is real doom and gloom.
There's a Chicken Little effect. You know what I mean? You say the sky's falling enough times, no one's going to believe you.
Cry wolf.
Yeah.
How many more
Yeah.
fables can we come up with? By the way, nephritis is a kidney infection and inflammation, in case you're
How
How
wondering.
about that?
you checked your Jewish wristband, with all the abbreviations and all
That's
the
right.
I did the
notifications on it.
the little hand paper.
I'll play you, Chris. Mine is 3 minutes, so it's a little bit long, but just play the first like 25 seconds of the one I was looking at a week and a half ago that that sort of captured this as well. It bothers me when they make the proclamations of things may never be the same again, and that's what we'll hear with I think it's Nicole Wallace on MSNBC.
An entire country holding its collective breath as we wonder if we'll ever gather again to worship, to celebrate, to grieve, to eat together, to learn, to work, to take in a movie or a play, or to cheer on our favorite sports teams. Right now, thousands of Americans are grieving the loss of loved ones, and millions are worried about lost jobs or lost savings, families separated, children not in school. And for many Americans, it's the great unknown about when or whether a return to normal is around the corner that causes the most anxiety.
I'm not worried about whether we're getting together ever again. Are you?
Right.
No,
No.
this
No.
is finite.
My-
Everything's finite.
My thing is like they bumped my Trans Am race at Laguna Seca, and I want to know if we're doing it in August or September. Those are
Yeah.
like that's my big worry.
Christie's a little more on the will things ever be normal again page. And we had the conversation probably a couple times over the last few days, which is like, well, I'll say, like, she's like, do you think Tessa's having a birthday party this year? I'm like, September 20th? Yeah, I think she'll have a birthday party this year. She's like, I don't know. There's no way to know. I'm like, well, there's no way to know, but I'm pretty sure. And then we're talking about our Christmas party, which is usually early December. And I'm like,
Yeah, we know when Christmas is.
I think our party's obviously before Christmas. I'm pretty sure we'll be able to have people over at that point. I mean, maybe we'll put some Purell out or something if people are freaked out. But like, I think we'll be okay. And she's a little more on the alarmist side.
Well, I wonder about wiring, which is if you take a pet and you drop the pet off at the vet, the pet thinks it's going to live at the vet.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
It doesn't have this thing where it has a context where you
Right.
go, oh, I'll be home in 9 hours or whatever it is, or the following morning. So the thing that would freak. So if you could explain to a pet,
Mm-hmm.
I am dropping you off at the vet, you're getting your nails trimmed or something, or your butthole expressed or whatever you're doing, and then tomorrow morning I'm going to pick you up. Your pet would be in a much different sense than
Yes.
it would be
Sure.
forever. And we are now thinking a little more like pets, but if the news is going to keep feeding the forever, then that's going to get planted in our head. I don't have any thoughts about forever, but if you start your newscast of
Right.
will we ever be the same again, now I'm having to think about it.
Right. And like you talk about with pets, this is exactly like kids. You drop a kid off at school the first day, they don't know when they're coming home. You have to
Right.
tell them. And so we're being, when you say, or what Bill Maher said, treat us like adults. In some ways, it's like we're being treated like we have the worst parents on the planet. Am I going to pick you up? I don't know. Will you be standing there in the dark waiting for
Right.
my car? Maybe. Who's to say?
I know. The great W.C. Fields had it right when he said, I don't want to work with kids or pets. Probably for this reason.
No.
Hey, Max Pata, the end, I'll skip the middle part. The whole middle part of this news part was about how racist is this virus. So there's a lot of that.
Oh.
But they got to the guy at the end, and I think his name was Barnacle, and he did this whole, so they did this whole thing where they were talking about how racist the virus was, and then they were talking about how people of color and Latinos, and I don't know if Latinos are people of color anymore. I don't know how it works anymore. But the point is
They're still
they were on the front lines. Are Latinos people of color?
yes, I believe
Go
so.
with that.
Yeah. brown
Okay,
people.
so they were on the front lines. There were the healthcare workers. They were driving the trucks. They were stocking the shelves at the supermarket. So then they said it's not a life or death decision for them. It's a death or death decision for them. Meaning,
Okay.
if they stay home and don't work, they die because they need the money. If
Right.
they go out to stock the shelves at the Albertsons, they die. So it's death or death. And this guy sort of summed it up at the end, but he didn't even really sum it up. He just told a horrific story and then made a proclamation that I can't make sense of. But you guys tell me if Mike Barnacle, he's a journalist and he's a social political commentator. Tell me if you can make any sense out of his last statement. But here we go.
Is that what you're hearing from some of the people you encounter?
Yeah, I'm sorry, what, Nicole?
You know, Westmore
What
talked
phrase
about
did
it's
you
not
use?
life and death, it's death and death. You go out and do your jobs and you risk your life,
death
or you
and death.
don't work and you risk your life.
Nicole, absolutely. I mean, look, inequity has
Absolutely.
always been part of the DNA of the United States of America. It can't be denied. But now it jumps off the sidewalk at you. You can go through neighborhoods, poor neighborhoods, see variety stores, hair salons, and you know they're not coming back. Yesterday, oddly enough, I was at a local hospital here in Boston. I brought a person in for infusion treatments. While the person was undergoing the infusion treatment, I was taking a walk around the facility, and I bumped into a nurse. She has PTSD. You can tell she has PTSD. And she told me a story about the night before watching a man die, 74, 75 years of age. She thought, the father of a family. The family was watching him as he faded into death. They were watching him on an iPad. So this is dying alone in America. And sadly, I think one of the epitaphs for this particular period of time we're going through is that a lot of people now think that this is no longer the country we once thought it was. It's sad.
What does that mean? It's no longer the country we once thought it was.
I guess daily life maybe has changed so much. That part didn't track for me. Obviously, the story's heart wrenching.
I heard a "Make America Great Again" dog whistle,
Ah, yeah.
Oh, interesting.
which is very stealthy on MSNBC for him to pull that.
Oh, is
No,
that
I
a-
don't know. I'm kidding. I don't.
I don't know. Like I was like, he said it with so much gravitas, but I
did.
don't know what the fuck he's talking about. And then also, like I was talking to Drew about it, and I was like, it's great to say that the nurses have post-traumatic stress, whatever. But if you are an ER nurse or you work in that ward, you just see people die every day. Drew's like, those nurses see people die routinely
Right.
all the time.
The only thing I can think of is we've reported a few stories about some walkouts because they don't want to go in patients' room without proper equipment. They don't have the right mask and they're being forced to go in. So they're just walking out of the hospital and saying, I'm not going in their room. I don't know what to tell you. So when you're,
I get
that's
it.
an
but I
only
mean,
example I can think of.
But he's like, the 75-year-old man had to watch through an iPod, an iPad to his family. It's like, yeah, that's where we're at for
And
now.
oh my God,
temporary.
we can do that in the future in
right.
technology. I can be there.
Well, that's a good spin on it.
Look how far
All
I've come.
right. So it's scary, everybody. Or you don't have to go down that road, and you can enjoy this time while
You know
we're
what this made me think of? The whole Bill Maher thing and all the news. This has been going on for God knows how many decades. I remember there was I'm going to try and get this right. I think it was one of Michael Moore's documentaries. I think it was Bowling for Columbine, where he had a whole segment on why is the news, or maybe it was Fahrenheit 9/11. It's one of those two. Like, why is the news trying to freak us out? It was a whole montage of the news trying to freak you out. Some of it was comical, some was absurd. Like, what you don't know about your dog can kill you, that kind of stuff, coming up next. And it's funny that two of the most liberal guys in Hollywood, Bill Maher and Michael Moore, like wave this flag of like, hey, news, fucking relax, please. Like, I understand you have to keep people coming back after a commercial break, but don't freak us out.
Well, as I said to Drew, because I talked to Drew about this a lot, and Drew would say, like, why is the news being irresponsible? And I would say the news is generating revenue. Mm-hmm. And I wouldn't think of it as the news. I would just think of it as a TV show that is trying to generate revenue, but it generates revenue differently than ESPN and Tiger King, and everything has a Jimmy Kimmel Live. They have Howard Stern show. Everything has a model to generate revenue. This is their revenue model. The revenue model is the more doom and gloom, the scarier it is, the more eyeballs they get, the longer the eyeballs stay, and the more sensational the headlines, the better their model works. So let's not expect them to deviate from their model.
Sure.
That is
That's what
their
they know.
model.
Yeah.
Everyone has a model. With that in mind, it is now up to us. Now that we're aware there's a model, sadly, we're going to have to filter everything. In a way, if anyone had a friend who was a little bit hysterical, if anyone who has a kid who's a little bit hysterical, and they sort of explain to you, I told you I'd do this with Dr. Drew all the time. He'd go, I was walking through the airport and a woman came up and started screaming at me. And I'd go, all right, she wasn't screaming at you, but I wouldn't listen to him. Like I'd adjust it for Drew.
Yeah.
You calibrate it.
I would calibrate it. Yeah. I'd go, no, somebody came up to you at the airport and they said some things that, were negative, but they didn't run up and start screaming at you. And then at some point he'd go, all right, well, she didn't scream, but X, Y, and Z. And so we're now having to do that with our news. So it's up to us to do it.
Mm-hmm.
All right. We got the game to play. We have we got Dawson's mashup. Which one is this, Dawson? Is this the Doors?
This is the Doors' "Touch Me."
Oh.
Oh,
Because there is a
God,
fan,
yeah,
you did bring up that there was just a fantastic horn section.
Robbie Krieger wrote this one,
Right.
I think, and it's got a great horn section. So, all right, let's mash it up.
Sorry, I'm let's not pull. Here we go. Yeah. So Jim Carolla sat in with the gang and had a good time.
Of course.
And I also have to share audio. I'm sorry.
Well, we can play Rotten Tomatoes. You want to do that,
here
Chris?
Here it is right now. Here it is.
Come on, now touch me, babe. Can't you see that I am not afraid? What was that promise that you made? Why won't you tell me what she said? What was that promise that you made? Now I'm gonna love you till the heavens stop.
Dawson, please tell me you're high when you put these things together. You have to be high.
How could I not be?
You have to be high.
Because it has to sound good.
Yeah.
Come on, now touch me, babe. Can't you see that I am not afraid? What was that promise that you made? Why won't you tell me what she said?
You let it go there.
What was that promise that you made?
All right, so
That's great.
that was
Well
great.
done, Jim
Hey,
Carolla.
I have a question for Dawson. Dawson, when you make these mashups, do you draw the trumpet from the cheap trumpet or from the expensive trumpets?
Oh, I mix them both, but they're both playing the same song.
Brian, if you can't tell,
So
what does it matter?
Really, I have 6 incredible notes to choose from, and it's a good time every time.
It's a masterpiece.
Somebody tweeted me something funny is when we were talking about flamenco guitar and Charo.
Right.
week.
Some about Spanish Caravan, maybe. That's what
Right.
that she played the same piece that was played in a Doors song.
Yeah, the thing that was interesting is we somehow stumbled onto Charo. I then explained that she was
We were talking about Angeline, and they said, well, what did Charo ever do? And you said she was a great guitarist.
right. Yeah,
It's another perfect great magnet thing.
right. And then spoke to Robbie Krieger a half hour later, but the clip we showed of Charo playing was the same as Spanish Caravan. Was that what it's called?
It might have been. Yeah.
Either way, we'll I don't know if we have the two. Do we have two of them, X-Men? Oh, okay, Chris made a
Oh,
little
boy.
something. A lot of production in this show. Yeah, that's Charo. That's her, right?
Yeah.
This is Robbie Krieger with the Doors.
I smoked a joint in that dude's backyard.
Wait, who's?
Densmore.
You can pause it. Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Was he alive?
He was alive. He wasn't there. My friend was
Ask-
house sitting.
Ask Robbie Krieger how Densmore was doing. Oh, not Densmore. Sorry.
Yeah,
I don't
Ray.
know about.
Raymond
You're
Raymond
right. Ray
Zarek.
Manzarek. He's
Oh,
like, he's been dead
fantastic.
for 3 years. I'm like, oh, yeah. Forgot
Just
about
answer
that.
the question, Robbie.
Yeah.
We're all under so much stress with this Corona business. I can't.
You can't even write that off to stress for Corona. You can't even
No.
write off your mistakes. Like, we're all just really stressed to the limit here.
it's
Things are
just-
really chaotic.
There's too many people alive that I think should be dead, and too many people dead I don't know are dead. All right, should we play the game? Should we play some Rotten Tomatoes?
Do it.
Max Spanner?
Are we coming back with that, or are we doing that in
No,
this
let's
segment?
just go right into it.
Oh, okay, sorry about that. I wasn't ready.
Listen to that noise. It's a high falsetto voice that can only mean one thing, and you can feel it. Got some names of flicks, and the gang makes their picks, guessing if it's rotten or fresh. If they guess it exactly, we'll get a bonus 5. It's the Rotten Tomatoes game. You know how we do it.
All right. So before we get
All right, we got it.
Before we get into Adam's conversation with the legendary Dennis Quaid, we're going to go through some of his filmography for this week's Rotten Tomatoes game. That's right, folks. This week, we're turning the heinous quarantine into a Dennis Quaid-rantine.
Smooth.
Okay.
Okay? We'll begin at the beginning. A breakout role for young Dennis Quaid, one of Adam's all-time favorite movies from 1979, Breaking Away.
Love that movie. It's quietly a great sports film, even though it doesn't really feel like a sports film, and it's got a ton of comedy in it. All right, well, the critics had to love this one, so I think it got nominated for Best Original Screenplay or something.
Sounds about right.
And they loved it at 88%.
I'm really close to a 91.
I'm closer. 88.
Breaking Away is certified fresh at 94%.
Ah, hell.
Wow. Well, the people had it at 88.
Yeah.
We get a minus
Interesting.
2.
Mhm.
Of course, everyone knows Dennis Quaid for his role as a test pilot turned astronaut in 1983's The Right Stuff. But he played another test pilot 4 years later.
That's right.
This time, a miniaturized one.
That's right.
Oh,
After a
yes.
secret experiment goes terribly wrong, Quaid's miniature pilot is injected into a hypochondriac played by Martin Short. Will he escape? 1987's Inner Space.
Now, how are Brian and I supposed to know if this was good or we just thought it was good when we were 5?
Yeah, this is my example of a movie I cannot be objective about because I saw this. It came out in 87. I probably saw this 25 times when I was 10 years old. I have no idea if this is good or not.
This was a sleepover movie.
Yeah. And God, hey, Dennis Quaid has been in so many movies. It's incredible. All right. I like this movie. I thought it was a fun movie. I kind of remember it. And but yeah, it's impossible to know if you just really like this movie because you were young or because it was good. And look, if you saw a really good Pixar movie at age 9, you'd love that too, and it would be 95%.
And this had, like, from what I remember anyway, cutting edge qualities at the time.
I think it was nominated for Best Special Effects. Or
Yeah, I
I'm
buy that
almost
completely.
positive. I have to look
All
it
right.
up.
So I have no idea. And I'm going to go just fresh at 63.
73.
66.
Inner Space. Fresh at 82%.
I'm pleasantly surprised to hear that.
I have
And
to
the
watch this
people
again.
have it at 65. What's that about?
This is kind of crowd pleasing, right? Like it's funny
I
and
thought
There's nothing
so.
wrong with it. Yeah.
All right.
Hey, remember back in 2011 when they remade Footloose? Adam's Dancing with the Stars partner, Julianne Hough, played the lead. And Dennis Quaid took over the John Lithgow role. A preacher doesn't want anyone dancing in his town. 2011's Footloose.
Well, the critics could not have been kind to this. I did not see it. The part twos, they can be tough. And I didn't hear anything good about it.
And is this just a good old fashioned remake or a sequel?
this is a remake.
Okay.
Brian has notched a lead so far, so we're going to have to
Catch up.
get bold here and catch up. Now, look, everyone's dancing really well. I mean,
Yeah.
got to be worth something. I am going to go low at 29.
A little higher than you at 35.
I think I went too high, 42.
Ooh. Footloose is fresh
Oh,
Really?
at 69,
Oh,
dude.
Yeah, dude.
Christ. Fantastic.
Oh, man. Who
Wow,
the
I am
hell?
I am really shocked.
Who was the
Wow.
guy? Who's the Kevin Bacon role? I don't know him.
Miles Teller, maybe?
Oh, maybe. Well,
I don't know. I see his name on here.
oh, okay.
Let's go back to the early 80s when Dennis Quaid, a young Dennis Quaid, was still trying to find that next big thing. Why not take the lead role in the original blockbuster franchise? A great white shark escapes its sea tank at SeaWorld and terrorizes a town in 3D. From 1983, Jaws 3.
All right. Now, look, this Brian has a pretty stout lead at this point.
I made up a
and-
lot of points in the last one.
Yeah, I think it's pretty slim.
Well, it does over me, but not
Yeah.
over Gina, but definitely over me. So I am going to go with.
Ooh, wait.
Hold on, we got Bryce up and down here. Did anyone ever see this movie?
I've seen
Yes.
bits and pieces
Oh,
of it
okay.
on TV.
You've seen it, Brian.
Jaws 3D? Absolutely not.
I am going to go with 9.
Oh wow, I thought I was going low. 18.
Well, I almost doubled you. A little more? I don't know. I can't do math anymore. 37.
I think we got a tight game because Jaws 3 is rotten at 10.
Whoa.
Double digits.
The audience has it at 17, so so it's a people movie.
Our final film. Remember the Alamo? What about The Alamo? A big budget, star-studded historical drama about the 200 soldiers who took on an army of 2,000. Billy Bob Thornton co-stars as Davy Crockett, and Dennis Quaid plays General Sam Houston, leading the charge for Texas independence. 2004's The Alamo.
I have zero
no memory of
recollection of this movie. It's like a Dean Devlin movie.
And the poster says you'll never forget, and nobody remembers this movie.
I saw this in the theater.
No
Oh.
shit.
Yes, I did.
Wow.
And I went to high school with Dean Devlin.
Yes, you
so
did. I remember
I
that.
am going to be within a percentage points off on this one. I mean, maybe like a 0.7, 0.4 range.
Fraction of a
Because
point.
I went to high school with Dean Devlin. I didn't know him. Now,
Wow.
I saw this in the theater, and it's like a perfectly serviceable movie because it's just the Alamo, the movie, all the Davy Crockett's and folks like that in it. So I don't know. I can't tell. Like it seemed perfectly fine to me. You didn't walk out thinking that you were blown away. It was just like, yeah, it's a movie
That's what
about
happened.
the Alamo.
I was half joking, Adam. Is this actually a Dean Devlin production?
I have no idea.
Oh, I thought you knew. I thought for some reason.
No,
you knew that.
no, it probably isn't. But
Okay.
this game is fairly close,
Jesus.
and God, I can't think if we weren't really in the mode where we're like punishing patriotic movies. I'm in 04. I'm gonna say 67.
Oh no, this is where the game gets decided because I said 39.
I split the difference. I said barely rotten 55.
The Alamo is rotten at 29%.
Whoa!
There's a reason why you haven't heard this movie, Gina.
Oh my God.
I guess I enjoyed it more than
Brutal.
critics. Yeah.
That's crazy.
Was that the last one, Dawson?
That
Yeah.
was.
That was indeed the
Oh,
last
boy, I
one.
went
We
the
have
wrong
Feeling
direction
good about
on
that.
one.
we have our scores. We have our winners. Congratulations to Gina Grad making the podium.
Thank you.
Paul Bryan, you also made the podium.
Sweet. It's a good day.
Adam Carolla.
Come on, podium.
Securing that final spot on the podium with a score
yeah.
of 104.
Oof-ah.
Ooh, fa la 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 la. Gina Grad coming at it with something fairly close to that.
No.
Is the game that tight, though?
For
Gina
second place.
Grad for second place.
Oh.
Bald Brian
Yeah.
made you take it. Brian takes the win with 64. Gina, you got 102.
Oh.
Squeezing Adam into that third place spot.
Humiliating.
That was fun.
All right, let's bring it home.
It's the Rotten Tomatoes game. You know how we do it.
All right, let's see. Who's coming up? We're going to talk to Rob. I got to get my paperwork
Freed.
here, Max. Rob Freed.
I'm not kidding. That boy's head's like Sputnik.
Yes, Rob Freed. We'll talk. Oh, you want to do some Nancy Grace?
Always down.
Yeah, let's
Do we have some?
we have Nancy talking about the Tiger King here?
Uh-oh.
Yeah, let's do it.
Of course.
Who do you think Joe Exotic's going to hang around with? Nuns and priests and virgins? Of course, they're all eccentric, as you guys are saying. That's certainly a euphemism, putting perfume on the pig. And nobody's in this with clean hands. But the reality is we're talking about a murder plan.
I am so glad somebody is finally talking about this because everyone's going, oh, they're so eccentric. Oh, don't we love his hair? Don't we love his flamboyant clothing? But we have a murder suspect on our hands.
Well, what about the woman whose husband is missing? Now,
Don't you speak Carol Baskin's name in this house. She is evil. She knows exactly what she did, and I intend to prove it. Do you know they reopened that case?
They did.
They reopened that case. Now, she's not considered a suspect per se or a person of interest, but I have one addendum to that. They don't consider her a suspect yet.
Oh, might you know something that they don't know, Nancy?
Look, I don't want to tell tales out of school. I don't want to go, with a flying off the handle hypothesis because I'm Nancy Grace, and that's not what I do. I do in journalism with integrity. So I'm just going to really take my foot off the gas here because I don't want to get in any trouble. I think that Carol Baskin killed her husband, fed him to the tigers through a meat grinder, and it's only a matter of days before we prove it.
Wow.
But I don't want to tell tall tales. I don't want to get in any
That's
trouble.
a pretty tall tale right there, Nancy.
Nancy, speaking of getting in trouble, I was coming home today and I saw my son. He was taking a walk in the neighborhood and he wasn't wearing a mask. Is that problematic? Or we think he'll be okay?
Well, let me just make sure I'm getting this straight, Adam. When you say he wasn't wearing a mask, you mean obviously he wasn't wearing two masks.
Two masks? No, he wasn't wearing one mask. He had no mask on. He was just walking alone in the neighborhood.
Let me get this straight, Adam. You let your child, your baby, you sired this boy
Did.
in the middle of a pandemic. First of all, I can't even get past the fact that you let him walk alone in the neighborhood. He was alone, or you were holding his hand?
Oh, I think he had his earbuds on. He was probably listening to a podcast or something like that.
Were you carrying him like a baby monkey?
No, I was coming home from the shop. I was at the shop.
Oh my God. Okay. Well,
he
we'll
was
put a pin in that for a second. So he was only wearing the one mask.
Yeah, he wasn't. No, he had no mask. No, you're supposed to wear two masks. There's two masks.
Yeah, you have to wear at least two masks to walk around inside your own home. He had his respirator though. He had the gas mask that you use when you're bombing an apartment for bugs.
No. He was just walking regular. Like you wouldn't be able to tell if it was in the middle of a pandemic or not. He was just kind of walking.
Adam, my misunderstanding, my fault. I understand. He wasn't wearing a mask. He didn't need a respirator because you put him in one of them big size for human size gerbil balls. And he just rolled himself home like a cute little hamster. And that way he didn't need the mask, right?
No, this wasn't like John Travolta and the boy in the plastic bubble. He was just walking in the street alone with no mask and no respirator and no gloves or no anything. He was just taking a walk.
Adam, can you hold on one second? I'm just going to make a quick phone call. I hate to do this while we're talking, but hello? Yes, it's Nancy Grace. I'd like to report I'll hold. This is for Child Protective Services. Yep. Okay.
You're not telling them that. Not telling them about me, are you? This is not.
Adam, if you could just hold on one second. This is just. Hi there. Hi. Yes, I'm talking to comedian Adam Carolla. Crank Anchors. Loveline. It was a TV show as well. No? Okay. Stand-up comedian. Yeah. No. Okay. That's okay.
I know for a fact they farm these operators out. There's probably somewhere in India. That's probably why they don't.
Oh yeah, I'm sure it's no big deal. It's no big deal. Anyway, he let his son walk around the neighborhood alone, maskless, earlier today. I have him on tape. I have the receipts. I have the videotape. I can play for you. No, he wasn't. No, he didn't admit to beating him he didn't admit to molesting anybody. Okay, thanks. They are very upset about this, Adam. They said they will call me right back.
All right. Well, I'm going to move to Mexico with my son so we can live free.
Oh, sure. Go to Mexico. You know what you're not going to do? See your wife and daughter again. You're going to get mixed up in the Sinaloa cartel like everybody has good intentions. Let's go to Tijuana. Let's go see a donkey show. Take my son for the first time. You're not coming back here. You're coming back in one of them duffel bags. Just your head, though.
Nancy Grace. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I love that. All right. Let's see. Rob Freed is going to be on the line. We'll take a quick break. We'll come right back with Rob right after this.
4 U.S. senators sold stocks shortly after a January briefing in the Senate on the coronavirus outbreak. They unloaded shares that plummeted in value a month later as the stock market crashed in the face of a global pandemic. We're talking millions and millions of dollars in transactions based on what essentially is insider trading. A secret meeting you and your friends were privy to that the rest of America had no idea about. Kelly Loeffler from Georgia, James Inhofe from Oklahoma, Dianne Feinstein from California, and Richard Burr from North Carolina. All 4 of you are assholes. What makes it even worse is that while you were selling stocks, you were simultaneously telling the American people that we have nothing to worry about. What's going to happen from this? Most likely nothing. As you 4 are steadily decreasing the trust the American people have in our government, you're also getting richer, increasing your power, and playing stupid. Well, we're not stupid. If it looks like a duck, quacks like a duck, and walks like a duck, you can go ahead and tell us it's a mallard. But we all know it's a duck. So duck you. We're not going to let you forget. Loeffler, Inhofe, Feinstein, and Burr. While we're all losers, you are the winners of COVID-19.
Nicely presented, Dawson.
Is
a mallard a kind of duck, though?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. But you could say it's not a duck; it's a mallard.
Oh,
that was my point. It's a
nuance.
Yeah, stop being cute.
you could tell I was passionate about that one.
Rob Freed is with us. Rob has got so much going on married to Nancy Travis, who plays Tim Allen's wife and Last Man Standing. So, of course, I have a connection there with Kevin Hench, and Rob's also a friend of Dr. Drew's. Good to see you, Rob.
Thanks, Adam. Nice to be here.
I'm glad you joined us. I've been talking almost nonstop about the immune system and strengthening the immune system. And I've always just sort of said, let's do it from the inside out. Let's be strong. And since every single case, and I think there's some overwhelming numbers coming in that the people that have perished from this virus are people that were compromised from an immune standpoint. Well, let's be the opposite of compromised. Well, let's work on that and give ourselves a great chance. You know, as per usual, the news is all sort of doom and gloom and run serpentine to the mailbox, and here a puppy got it and licked its master and died. But they don't really talk a lot about what we should and could be doing. And I know you're a fan of strengthening the immune system. So why don't you speak to that for a few moments, and then we'll get all over the place after that.
Well, you're referring to TruNiagen.
Yeah.
TruNiagen is a dietary supplement. The scientific name for the ingredient is called nicotinamide riboside. And nicotinamide riboside is a very, very exciting molecule, because what it does to the body, not the immune system per se, but the cells inside the body, all the cells inside the body, is fairly miraculous. So if you like, I could take a few seconds and explain what it does, but in essence, what it does is it strengthens the cells themselves. It gives the cells significantly more energy. It strengthens mitochondrial function, but it also increases a set of enzymes called PARP enzymes, which are the enzymes inside the cells responsible for repairing the damage inside the cells. So unlike the immune system itself, which attacks problems inside the body from outside the cell, there are also mechanisms inside the cell that are responsible for the strength and health and functioning of the cell. TruNiagen speaks directly to those functions.
And I want to get into some of the more official particulars of that, but I want to sort of broaden it out at the beginning and just talk about your path and how you got to where you are. You started off in the movie industry, and I'm looking at as a producer on Collateral and Rudy and Boondock Saints and many other films, and got sort of in early and often in it. And I want to talk about Troy Duffy and the doc Overnight, which it's one of my Overnight, and maybe The Kid Stays in the Picture, two of my top 5 doc. So we'll go back and then we'll come forward and figure out how your journey brought you to where you are today. So let's just talk about you. You grew up on the East Coast. You have a BS from Cornell University, and I don't think you were ever. I've heard interviews with you. I don't think you were like a showbiz guy. You were. I don't know, what would we call you?
A guy.
But I mean, you weren't particularly interested in movies. You were interested in data, like and how things worked.
I was always interested in ideas. I knew that I was going to be involved in enterprises and startup endeavors and things like this. I went to business school at Columbia. I was always interested in venture capital and technology and new ideas in general. Columbia Pictures recruited at the school. I went to work for the then president of Columbia Pictures, as like a strategic planning kind of numbers type of guy. So at that time in the 1980s, the movie business was still the vestiges of Irving Thalberg, where it was just gut and instinct. But in the 1980s, the film industry sort of modernized and began to make financing transactions and deals with cable companies and video companies and international companies. And the calculus of the business was the focus. And how do we convert this instinctive type of industry into something where we can optimize, if you will. And I was hired as along with a series of other newly minted MBAs all of whom have gone on to do fairly interesting things in the last 30 years or so. To do that. And we had a very dramatic impact on the business of Columbia Pictures, and filtered out and then started impacting the rest of the industry in general. Back then, they would hire somebody to be the head of production, and they would last a year, 2 years, 3 years, until their instinct wore off. Mm-hmm. But now that's not the case. Now these businesses are operated more like conventional businesses, and the roots of that change started in the quantitative analytical thinking that we were doing in the 1980s.
Well, can I liken it to, like, back in the day, you would hire a radio station would have a DJ. Like when I worked at K-Rock, they'd have all these DJs, and the DJs would just come in and play the music that they thought had that gut instinct about, or that they enjoyed, or bands they had relationships with. And then at some point they started testing songs, and they started crunching data, and then they got the personal, or was it the portable people meter, the PPM and stuff. And so it used to, the whole time I was in radio, or I was at K-Rock, there was a lot of, like, they had the Arbitron diaries. People had a little golf pencil in the diary, and they just write down what station they listened to, and they'd fill it all out at the end of the month. And Rodney on the Rock would come in there, and Jed the Fish, and they just play their own music. And at some point someone said, no, we're going to figure all this out, crunch the data, and treat it like any other business. Is that what went on in the film business as well?
More or less. In fact, when I was in business school in Columbia, I did a project just like that for PLJ. In New York is the same thing, which is to compile the data and try to optimize the playlist. It takes a lot of the art out of it, but it made more money.
Yeah, my question then would be, Rob, do you think it was an overall net gain? I mean, obviously there were certain aspects that were improved about production and such, but like to take the, I don't know, it sounds so nebulous, but to take the human side out of it, so to speak, you know what I mean? Do you think it was overall a net positive?
It's a net negative from an artistic standpoint.
Right.
Like we were already starting to see in the 1980s that an increasing percentage of, a smaller percentage of films were responsible for a larger percentage of the box office. You were already starting to see things like Ghostbusters, Close Encounters, E.T., Indiana Jones were already consuming a big chunk of the annual box office. So fewer films were responsible for a larger percentage of that box office, and that trend has continued. So what you've seen is an increase in flow of dollars towards bigger budget special effects or animated films. That trend began in the 1980s, and a lot of it came from that analytical thinking that some of us were working on.
Well, I know you don't like to think of yourself this way, but you were essentially the man everyone complains about.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Well, what's interesting, Adam, I'm a big movie fan, Rob. So what's interesting about the ones you mentioned, yes, they were huge successes, the Close Encounters and the E.T.
Raiders of the
Lost Ark, and those types of movies, but those were made by the legit artists, and maybe people didn't recognize that at the time as much as we do now, because Spielberg is Spielberg and Lucas is Lucas and such. But it's like, then to try and chase that dragon, you know what I mean, almost takes the soul out of it. I don't know what the hell.
Yeah, I mean,
I think he's agreeing with you.
Yeah, I agree. Steven Spielberg is a brilliant filmmaker, as is Jim Cameron. Yeah. But those films in the 1970s were really pretty special, where it was very actor and script oriented and a little bit less visual. I mean, it's a different type of art form, but that transition began right around that period.
Are we much further down that road now with all the big comic book spin-offs and everything having a recognizable title now? Are we just so far down that road? Well, I mean, there's always going to be independent films, and maybe they shift over to Netflix or HBO or something like that. But in terms of these big tentpole films, are we much further down that road than we were when you were working it?
We are further down that road. I mean, presently you'll see 5 films that all do $1 billion worldwide. In a cumulative box office of 15 billion, you'll see 5 films that could do a third of that.
We spoke off the air, I think, about Overnight, which was Troy Duffy and that whole, and I guess that was a Weinstein was in that doc too, wasn't he? Or was it Weinstein's company?
It's the Harvey Weinstein story on Boondock Saints is a fascinating story.
Yeah, Tell a little about that. I'm very interested in that story.
So Troy Duffy was a bartender in a place called Sloan's. Maybe you remember Sloan's in West Hollywood. It was a great little bar. He had never made a film. He had never really learned how to make a film, but he sat down and wrote a screenplay one day. And I was sitting in the backyard at the house here. We were having like a dinner party, and some guy that worked for our company at that time like intrudes the party, finds me in the backyard and slams a matchbook down on the table in front of me. And I said, "What is that?" He said, "Our next movie." Very dramatic, just like that. And I opened up the matchbook, and inside it said Troy Duffy with his phone number. I called Troy up the next morning. I went to Sloan's that afternoon, spent 3-4 hours with him having some beers. He gave me the script. I took it home that night. It was just a brilliant, brilliant, brilliant screenplay. I mean, it was a riveting screenplay. It was funny. It was dramatic. It had pathos to it. It had a point of view. So Troy asked us to produce the film. We did. We agreed to produce the film. And then a few days later, I called a number of studio executives, told them about the film. And Harvey Weinstein, even without reading the script, said, "I'll buy it. I'll make the movie." I remember I was driving on the 405 and I called him. I pitched it to him on the phone and he said, "I'll take it." So we set up a series of meetings at that Sloan's bar. And Harvey came to that bar, sat down with Troy. And his offer was, "I'll make the movie. You guys can own the movie. Troy can direct the movie. You could have final cut and total cast approval, and I'll buy the bar and give you the bar." And it was that last piece that made Troy say, "I'll do it." I'll take the deal. So one of Troy's conditions in making this movie was that everybody who worked or frequented that bar worked on the movie. And 3 of the guys that just frequented the bar, their job was to document the making of the movie. Mm-hmm. So there were these cameras that were just following us around everywhere. And at some point during the making of the film, they had a disagreement with Troy. They had a falling out with Troy, but they kept filming. So it ended up becoming a documentary that wasn't really approved by Troy. In fact, because Troy didn't like the documentary and where it was going, I ultimately didn't sign a release. So if you watch that documentary, all the scenes with me they're blurred out. Yeah, they're there. You just don't recognize me. It's blurred.
Where is that doc? I'm asking Brian because he always seems to be able to find these things.
Yeah, Chris. Shout out to Chris. He says you can stream it for free on Tubi, but if you don't want to sign up for that, it's worth a rental. That is a solid documentary.
Yeah, because Troy had the most momentum of any person I've ever met in my life, but it all came undone. Yes,
I came away from that movie convinced of one thing, and now I have the guy Rob. I can throw this off you. Do you think Harvey Weinstein ever intended to make and release that movie? Because it felt so obviously to me like a publicity stunt. There was like it's all of a variety. Harvey Weinstein buys this unknown guy's bar, and it's like, all right, he's very obviously trying to get headlines. Do you think there was ever intention to really make the movie like for real?
Yes.
Okay.
Soon after that deal, it appeared on the front page of the Life section of the USA Today newspaper that Harvey Weinstein bought the bar, and the line of actors that would come to Sloan's bar every night to meet with Troy to ask to be in that movie was staggering. Wow. Mark Wahlberg, Brad Pitt. I just remember Jim Carrey, actor after actor after actor. But ultimately, what Harvey came to realize is that Troy was not really a filmmaker, and he was a little bit in over his head, and he had maybe given, more than he wanted to. And then there was this famous dinner with Ewan McGregor and Troy in New York. I wasn't there, but I guess they went out into the alleyway for a cigarette, Ewan and Troy. And Troy said to Ewan, "Let's get out of this place and go to a strip bar." And Ewan politely turned him down, went back inside, called Harvey and said, "I'm not making a film with this guy. He's not a filmmaker." The next day, Harvey stopped returning anybody's calls. He decided he wasn't going to honor the deal that he had. And he just gave up on Troy and gave up on the entire movie. And the question was, are we going to sue him or are we going to beg him for the movie back?
Wow.
And
The movie ultimately got made.
Yeah.
And I don't know how it was received. Probably didn't get a real high score on Rotten Tomatoes. It's interesting, the phenomenon, the psychodynamic of the actors, the heat going down, waiting at the bar. It kind of reminds me of people hoarding toilet paper. It's like, what are we doing? It's like, we're hoarding toilet paper. Why? Because that's what we're doing. Like, Hollywood is very much that way.
Yeah.
Now, I'm sure it was a good script.
Yeah.
And there was definitely heat around it, but the heat almost built on itself, right? Like it just became bigger than the actual work. And yeah, this guy's never made a film before. How much, why were we so confident in his ability to direct?
Well, he was a unique voice, although it had similarities to Pulp Fiction in terms of tone of the movie.
Right.
And so that Pulp Fiction was such a dramatic film in the 1990s, and it's had such an impact on the industry in general. Everybody was looking for the next Quentin Tarantino, and the thinking was maybe it's this guy, Troy Duffy, who's so counterculture.
Boondock Saints, 25% with the critics, 91 with the audience.
People love that movie.
Quite a chasm. All right, so from there, you go into, well, the wellness community or the wellness space. How do you get from making these movies into the wellness space?
Well, you know, people ask me that question. When somebody starts their career in technology or real estate or finance, and then they find their way into the film business, it seems like nobody asks them how they do that.
That's a good point. It's funny when people are lawyers and they do something else, no one asks them why they did something else. Everyone was a former lawyer, every executive, everyone who runs a company. I got a law degree, but I moved on. Everyone goes, oh, yeah. But if you said I was a dentist, everyone would go, what? Why'd you leave? Why'd you put the drill down? What got you to? It is interesting. There's something about the film business that we go, because I think people look at the film business as the final destination. Everyone's trying to get there, and you clearly arrived there. So then why would you leave? I think there's probably a compliment in there somewhere.
Well, whatever it is, thank you. I felt at the time that I had said what it is that I wanted to say in the business, and that there were other things that were inspiring me. So I was drifting right around that time, and I was getting involved in many other things. I had an internet company at that time called What's Hot Now, which was a fairly significant endeavor. That was an e-commerce company, and I was really enamored by the technology. This was the late 90s. So, you know, my heart was moving in another direction. I continue even now to work on certain movies. I produce movies even recently, but really it's, I got very, very, very irresistibly passionate about the technology behind nicotinamide riboside, this product TruNiagen. I was first introduced to it in the late 90s. So I've been involved in this thing for about 20 years. And I found it so fascinating and so compelling and so brilliant that the passion that I had for it ultimately, inevitably became a profession.
Well, we're talking about basically, you know, once you hit a certain age and it's younger than you think, your body just starts dying off, and then it's a slow process. You try to stave it off with, you know, some exercise and fresh air, but I mean, at a certain point, your body essentially starts dying, and then we have all kinds of like injections and creams and stuff to put on top of our body, but it's kind of tough when we're doing it, back to the analogy, kind of from the inside out.
It's still dying, but with Botox, you just don't look like you're dying.
Right. So, and what's happening is the cells, and we need to fix it at a cellular level. And I'm guessing this is a hot topic for people, because especially for people who have some money, which is the one thing you can't buy is time, but maybe we're getting to that point where you can start buying time.
Right.
And So explain what's going on the cellular level, Rob. Sorry.
So I believe that this problem of aging and even dying is a problem that we will solve.
You know, what do you think? How far off? Like I got a 13-year-old son. Oh yeah, and a daughter. Damn, I gotta include her too. I got a 13-year-old daughter. She should look good in a two-piece when she's in her 80s. No, when I start thinking like philosophically, they're 13. I mean, by the time they start dying, we should have something. Yeah. But philosophically, what if they live to 200? Like, what do we do here? Like, how does that part work? Have we even begun to wrap our minds around that aspect of this?
I think that we will solve the problem of resources and space. I think that let's solve the problem of dying first.
So all the stuff we're talking about, all the joints, all the diseases, everything is essentially us dying. And I can utterly feel it. I feel it for me in my hands. I worked my whole life with my hands. I was a carpenter. Drew, who doesn't compliment me very often, said to me yesterday when he was pulling on my finger to try to give me a pinprick for the virus test, he said, you don't have any fat on your fingers. Thanks, sweetheart.
Oh, Mr. Romantic.
Lucky lady.
And I said, yeah, I don't know how it works, but he said, you probably because you work with your hands your whole life. And I was a boxer and I trained people in boxing. So my hands took a lot of punishment, but they were 1000% fine my entire life, even though I punished a shit out of my hands, doing all the manual labor and all the boxing training and all the punching and all the everything. And about 2 or 3 years ago, they started to go. Like I could feel like, oh, it was getting swollen on my pinky. I can't straighten my pinky anymore. You know, I could feel it in the form of my hands. And that was just father time kicking in. And then I was starting thinking, Jesus Christ, what the hell my hand's going to look like when I'm 75 or 80? But I'd like to stave that off a little bit if I could. But I'm sorry. I'm all over the road.
So let me talk about your hands for a second.
Yes.
So every living cell has a coenzyme called nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide, NAD. And NAD is involved with every important metabolic process inside the cell. In 9th grade or 10th grade, when we took biology, we learned about the Krebs cycle, or this idea of energy metabolism, how the body converts the nutrients from food and the oxygen from air into energy. And that energy is transported through the cell in molecules called ATP molecules. And the organelle inside the cell responsible for that is called mitochondria. This is basic science that we've known about for 100 years. In order for mitochondria to do that, it requires this thing called NAD. But as I mentioned before, there are also these enzymes called PARP enzymes that are responsible for repairing damage to the cell. So if you punch your hand repeatedly, there are cells there in the tissue and in the muscles in the hand that get inflamed. When that inflammation goes from acute inflammation, meaning the type of inflammation you get when you sprain a hand or sprain an ankle and it helps cure it, to chronic inflammation, that you live with it, it leads to all kinds of other problems and indications, like arthritis, for example. When we are young, the level of NAD is so high that we're able to ward off that oxidative stress and that inflammation. But as we age, the NAD levels are so low that when the inflammation is introduced, we can't ward it off, we can't reduce it, and it leads to these diseases and indications. So the question is, if we elevate NAD levels, can we restore PARP levels and energy metabolism levels so the cell functions as though it did when we were young? And we're now talking about dozens of studies in the scientific literature that suggest the answer to that question is yes, you can.
Yeah.
What is the best way to elevate NAD levels? And it appears as though by far the most efficient and safest and effective way to elevate NAD levels is this thing called nicotinamide riboside, or we call it TruNiagen.
In a pill form.
In a pill form.
And I know there's a study that came out just moments ago that I think we're talking about off the air a little bit about. I don't know what's in the study, but you literally just got it hours ago.
Yeah, so there's a scientist in the early 2000s at Dartmouth named Charles Brenner, now at University of Iowa, who discovered that this ingredient, nicotinamide riboside, elevates NAD levels inside the cells and does it very safely and efficiently. He not only discovered that it does it, he also discovered that when the cell is under distress, there's an enzyme that's actually what they call upregulated or activated, searching for that molecule to elevate NAD levels to repair itself. So several years ago, one of the world's leading researchers on coronavirus, a guy named Stan Perlman, also at University of Iowa, and Dr. Brenner did an actual study on coronavirus. And it turned out, this is from several years ago, that when a coronavirus attaches to a cell, the NAD levels decline rapidly. And the repair levels go up rapidly. So what that suggests is the cell is trying to heal itself. It's trying to ward off the virus, and it's trying to heal itself if the virus hits it. So Dr. Brenner and Dr. Perlman, about a month ago, dusted off that old thing and said, we never published this thing. Who ever heard of coronavirus?
Right.
So they replicated, in the last month, they replicated that study in a whole series of other human cells. And they also accumulated data from other researchers that have published their data in the last month on ferrets. There's a ferret study. Believe it or not, ferrets are animals that have very, very similar lungs to humans. So they do lung disease studies on ferrets to test to see if it would be a match. So there are ferret studies. There's a study on a cadaver, a human body that died of coronavirus. And there's also these genetic studies. And these studies are all validated.
Excuse me. How do they do two questions. How do they do the study on the cadaver? Like how is that executed? And Dawson, what were the name of the ferrets from Beastmaster?
Kodo and Podo.
Okay.
His thieves.
Now we'll get to the cadaver.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So all they do is draw the blood from the cadaver, and then it's a simplistic preclinical study. It's not a study that said we can cure anything. It was just a study to say, do the NAD levels in the blood of this cadaver, are they decreased with the presence of the coronavirus? Are the PARP levels increased? And that enzyme that is looking for Niagen or nicotinamide riboside, is that increased? And the answer to all three of those were yes.
So so just to put it in layman's terms, something I've always thought, which is if you're vulnerable, then this thing can take you down. And if you're less vulnerable, you have a much better shot. And less vulnerable means not overweight, eating healthy, exercising, and this TruNiagen product could also strengthen your cells against the virus.
Yeah, so it turns out that as we age, NAD levels decline dramatically. I mean, there's literature that suggests that when you're 40, you have half the level of NAD in your cells as when you're 20, half, and that it halves again from 40 to 60.
Well, I have a quick question in here. The human lifespan or some version of that, or maybe 500 years ago, the human beings didn't make it much past 40. So was nature just sort of saying, all right, you're 46, it's time to die. You don't have to have kids anymore. You're not Tony Randall. Google that shit. I think he had kids when he was like 84 or something like that. But we don't need you anymore. You're an old timer. You're 46 years old. Now, complete different culture going on. We got 40, 46 is the new 26. People want to look good. They want to go snowboarding. They want to be active. So nature sort of said, well, you're in your 40s. We're done with you. But we're saying, no, we'd like to make it into our 80s and 90s, and we don't want to look like shit and have our joints hurt the whole time. Is that kind of the general synopsis of the battle here?
Yes. I think also the epidemiology of people dying when they're 46 wasn't so much that the body was decaying at that point. It was more that it was more statistical, that people died of diseases or accidents or things at such a young age that when you calculated the mean or the median, it ended up being 46. But this idea that the human body decays and that there's an expiration date on the human body is a real idea. I mean, there is evidence to suggest that the body is not capable of living past 120 or so. But I think that the science that we're looking at now in the longevity field, not just NAD, nicotinamide riboside, although that is by far the most actionable thing other than exercise and staying thin that you can do, is to take TruNiagen. But you look at all the other interventions that are being researched and looked at, and there's no doubt that this problem is going to be solved, that the lifespan of the human body is going to extend well beyond 120 and probably even in time for your 13-year-old daughter.
You know, they have those, they always talk about, especially with the coronavirus, like there's going to be the death courts, like who's going to decide who gets a ventilator and who doesn't. I'm going to need someone in charge of deciding like who's so big a douchebag they shouldn't see their 80th birthday. Like, I can't have you to 125. You're such an insufferable douche.
Just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Right. And I'll be the guy in the gold windbreaker deciding on who does that. Hey, Rob, let me give a plug for you. TruNiagen, that's TruNiagen.com is the website you go to. It's also the product. I won't say any names on the air, but Rob and I spoke off the air. Lots of notable people on this product, because you think about the notable people, they have the resources, but they're still on the same clock we're on. I think it's about $35 a month worth a bottle, or the bottle has a few months in it, right? But it runs about $35 a month for the supplement.
Yes.
Which it seems $110, $125 a day seems pretty worth it to me. So Rob, I hope we'll talk again soon when there's even more information out there. And congratulations on this study. This is a big deal.
Timely.
And I think people be taking it prophylactically, I guess is the word, right?
Yes, I think there's evidence of a prophylactic benefit and a therapeutic benefit. But at this point, you're talking about preclinical studies. We still need to actually prove in a human clinical peer-reviewed study that it actually works. Right now, we're looking at mechanistic impact.
But if you have a ferret, you're well on your way to your ferret living forever.
Codone Proto are great shape. Rob Fried, thank you very much. Go to True with a U, TruNiagen.com and get all the info right there. Thanks, Rob.
Anytime, Adam. Thank you, guys.
We'll talk soon. All right, let's take a quick break. We'll come back and do the news right after this.
With Gina Grad, breaking viral, all those crazy Trump tweets. Give me news with Gina Grad, trouble in the Middle East, celebrity drug meltdowns. Need news with Gina Grad.
The news with Gina Grad.
Well, we're still getting new names of people who are catching this damn virus, and some of them are athletes. Now, apparently, Denver Broncos star linebacker, former Super Bowl 50 MVP Von Miller, is the second active NFL player to test positive for COVID-19. He says he's doing well and self-isolating at home. And here's a clip of him telling today's show's Chanel Jones about his experience battling this virus after saying he'd been taking it seriously. Once, they were training in San Francisco. And when San Francisco went on lockdown, he immediately went back to Denver, and he took this seriously from the beginning.
I've been here in Denver for about 4 weeks now, and within that 4 weeks, I've probably left the house 4 times. All of those 4 times, I never got out the car.
Wow.
It's just to drive, to pick up food, and to come back home. So I've really just been taking it serious, staying at home. Of course, I have people come in, in and out, like workers, maids, and people to come do the plumbing, just everyday stuff. But it was really nothing crazy. Got a cough, and here we are today.
And he does say before that that he does have asthma, but he thought he had a weird cough and he used a nebulizer and it didn't work. So then he decided he needed to get tested for something that didn't have anything to do with asthma.
Hey, Brian, are you as upset over the face masks that linemen wear? I know Von's a pass rusher, but I'm talking about offensive linemen. I watch these mock draft shows when I row on my rowing machine, and they show the big tackle from LSU, and he's got the drop mask. He's got all of the drop quarterback cage, like back. See, there's two ways you could tell what position a guy plays in football. You can tell by the number and by the face mask. You used to be able to tell by the face mask. The guy had the big cage.
Right, big
that was
grill,
always a
with the
lineman.
line down the middle.
Yeah, and there was a big one. There was like a squared off birdcage one, and then there's even a bigger one, and you knew who played what. It started with the least contact guy in the world. Those were the kickers. Those were the punters and the kickers, and they had like a single bar. They had almost nothing.
Slung low across their jaw.
Slung low across the chin. Then the second sort of least contact guys were like the quarterbacks, and they had a little bigger, but not all that much bigger. Then they had the running backs, and every once in a while there was a running back that would wear the one with the crossbar, or there was like the Larry Zonka one, which had like the bull ring on it and stuff. You could tell like what position guys played by their face mask. Now almost everyone wears the same kind of drop thing, including the interior line guys. And my child's going to have to grow up in a world with almost no differences in face mask, and I don't want to live in that world.
So
when you say your child, you mean Italia, right? Because Sonny's not going to have any interest. I'm joking, of course.
I used to obsess on face masks, which teams wore which style, which guys ran which ones. And there was always there's always somebody, there were a couple of guys in the 70s who even had like the old school Gale Sayers type, or the O.J. Simpson. O.J. Simpson had the one he wore in college. It was like that same kind of a 2-bar weird thing that was like every football helmet lamp from the 70s had just that on. It was like a standard thing. Now everyone's just got the same one.
What does Von Miller wear?
Kind of the same kind of drop one.
You know what? Never took what had a short run and surprisingly didn't last was the visor, like the shades. You know what I mean? Like that's like a real like advantage for like running backs and stuff. You couldn't see if they were looking. They were looking at the linebacker. They were looking. You know what I mean? Sizing at the defense. Like Danny Tomlinson wore the visor. Other guys
have
did.
The clear. I think they made a rule that it has to be clear.
Oh, is that like a head injury thing? You think?
No, they had a clear. Let's see. We talked about it once when it came to the offensive lineman on Cleveland, Brown, I think. Was it
the guy who got injured in the eye or something like that?
Yes,
with the flag?
Yes. So they said they didn't want. So Jim McMahon wore one, but you couldn't see it. You couldn't read his face. It wasn't good for TV. You couldn't see the guys. Well, you think about those shots of like Tom Brady, like in the shotgun where they get right up on his face and you can see him surveying the defense and all that. And it wouldn't work, that kind of Darth Vader thing. But I do think some of the skill guys have just a clear plastic now.
It does seem like it. It's definitely a competitive advantage. Like if Tom Brady were to wear Jim McMahon, you couldn't read the quarterback's eyes, couldn't see him sizing up the defense. Like that's a competitive advantage.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is I don't think they have the smoked one now. They just have the clear, so you physically couldn't get a fingernail in the eye.
So you don't get to pick like you get grandfathered in hockey, and you just don't feel like wearing a face mask.
Well, there was a time when initially nobody had a face mask. Then some guys had a face mask, and it was kind of like hockey, and that there was a point in the league, probably 5 years, where like some guys had them, some guys didn't. There was also a weird thing in like the 40s or the 50s where they had a clear plexi face, which kind of makes sense. Like you could see through the plexi that was going around the guy's face, but it probably wasn't nearly strong enough either way. So,
all right. So rest up,
Von.
Von Miller.
Yeah, I like Von Miller.
And she said, like, so, how's your day been so far? And he's like, I woke up 30 minutes ago just to do this. So I think he's struggling a little, but he looks pretty good. New York and other East Coast states have extended their shutdown to May 15th. LA Mayor Garcetti says the ban on large gatherings specifically could last into next year, which we talked about a little bit. What you just mentioned, Adam, is the big headline lately, and I bet Vinny is just I told you soing all over the place. The New York Times, along with lots of other news outlets, are reporting that obesity may be the most important predicator of severe coronavirus illness. This is according to a new study. Though people with obesity frequently have other medical problems, the new study points that the condition in and of itself as the most significant risk factor after old age for being hospitalized with COVID-19. The research is preliminary, not peer-reviewed, but it supports what so many doctors are saying. No one knows why obesity makes COVID-19 worse, but the three leading theories are: one, some coronavirus patients with obesity may already have compromised respiratory function. Two, abdominal obesity can cause compression of the diaphragm, the lungs, and the chest capacity. And three, obesity is known to cause chronic low-grade inflammation and an increase in circulating pro-inflammatory cytokines. I think we were talking about the cytokine storm the other day, which may worsen things. So, I mean, it kind of adds up.
We're going to have to do something about obesity, and it's going to have to we're going to have to sort of declare war on it like we would do on smallpox or malaria or whatever I don't know, like when AIDS was killing everyone, it was like, we got to tell everyone to put a condom on, and we'll put those condoms at the gay bars. We'll put them in the fishbowl and we'll make them free. Like we have to.
We'll put the celery in the fishbowl.
Yeah,
as many as you can carry.
Free celery, fatty. We're going to have to do something. And this whole notion of like, well, your body shaming, like, no, this is about health.
Yeah.
Well, this is life and death. Yeah.
This is life and death. And it's also putting a crazy burden, not only on your knees and hips, but the system. It's putting a huge burden on the system. And we're going to have to, every commercial I see, it's so funny. If you watch like the NFL Network, you'll see the same commercials over and over again. It's like 1 in 6 children go to bed with food insecurity. It's like, we got to shift the narrative from everyone is starving to we're fucking fat and we need to do something about it now. And like, if few people get their feelings hurt, so be it. It's essentially the parents going, hey, no jelly beans for breakfast. That's it. Like, we're going to have to work it out. And I'm not a real like Bloomberg kind of like no Coke over 16 ounces, although there is no reason for a soda to be over 16 ounces. There just isn't. But like what if you just took,
unless you're on a date with 2 straws, you know what I mean?
That's right.
At the malt shop.
Yeah, with it called a knee high. So there's a few things, for instance, drinking your calories. I see people drinking those Arizona pre-sweetened iced teas and like a big like 19 22 ounce thing, and they think they're drinking iced tea.
That's right.
They don't think they're drinking soda.
And a good rule of thumb. Yeah.
Yes, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was just because of what you just said. I think a good rule of thumb is if you order something at Starbucks with a dome on top,
yes,
bad idea. Because dome means room for whipped cream, and that's not the kind of thing you're supposed to be drinking.
Right. And they wouldn't do that with, pure, with pulverized kale and ginger. Nobody puts a dollop of whipped cream on there. Yeah. So we need to first thing, we need to understand what we're drinking. I feel like people just drink stuff all day long and have no idea what they're doing to themselves by just that subject alone. I think people understand fast food is not real great for you and it makes you fat and this, that, and the other. But most of the people, Bald Brian included, and my buddy Chris, not that Chris, but another Chris, everyone I know who's lost a ton of weight just went, I stopped drinking so much soda and I started walking.
Yeah, that was
places.
the first. That was the first and easiest thing. To cut out the soda. I haven't had a real soda in God knows how many decades. But yeah, they cut that out, and you're halfway there.
But either way, like if we can just start taking some of this stuff that we turn into some sort of, we break everything down in some socioeconomic thing or by race or by gender or shaming or whatever. If we could just go, this is just a pure health standpoint. People are obese. We need to rein it in. And we're going to get fatter too, because life's getting easier every 10 seconds.
Right.
Yeah, and we're quarantined. Everyone's getting
Right.
fatter. But I think that, and we may have brought this up the other day, it's usually just this overall arching topic of, you really shouldn't do that, and you really should think about your health. And there's nothing to grab onto. But when you have a study that says, hey, obese people are dying at an alarming rate because of this disease, because of this virus that everyone's catching, that's tangible. That
Right.
makes me put down the fork when I see something like that, because it's been hard for me too, sitting around in a chair at a newsroom and eating while I work, and I definitely feel myself gaining, and I don't want to do that.
Well, I'll tell you what, another thing, you notice I was talking about my hands, but one thing you notice when you get older is when you used to want to, in the past, when you're younger version of yourself and you're like, I want to cut 5 pounds this week, and you go, all right, I'll take it easy on breakfast and lunch, and I'll do this and I'll do that, and you do all the stuff you thought you would do. Your body doesn't react the same way. That weight that used to just come dripping right off when you modified things a little bit, not so much. You got to modify things a lot as you get older if you really want that weight. What was pretty easy, even I'm 55. When I was 45, if I wanted to drop 10 pounds in a week, it was pretty easily done. It is not easily done anymore. So there's a little more work involved. But in general, there is a benefit to this, which is your weight and your body and your nutrition and your health is a direct correlation to many principles in your life that are very valuable. And I have a theory. The two guys I grew up with, my two best friends, were very gifted in the physique department. Things came very easily to them. They did not have to work out to look like they'd been working out or to be physically dominating or anything. But, and I did. I had to eat 6 hard-boiled eggs and live in the weight room if I was going to be an all-valley football player. Chris and Ray did not. But later on, I was able to use that discipline and focus a little more in life. And they never had that base of like that discipline. Like it literally just was too easy for them. And what you put in your body and how much you exercise your body, and you guys know it's a daily struggle. Like it is on your mind every single day. It's a constant battle. And when you're a kid, you don't really need it. You never get fat. You always look good. You never really develop that discipline gear.
Mm-hmm.
And Gina, I would bet you and the struggles you've had over the years with weight has probably made you more disciplined and a little more focused and a little more able to have sort of dominion over yourself. Because if you think about it, you finish your meal and then somebody goes, hey, you want a piece of cheesecake? And you go, oh, I don't. I do.
Do I want it? Yeah.
I don't. And then you elect not to. Then there's the other person that goes, cheesecake, give me 2 pieces. And they eat 2. Well,
and
then
I've been there.
At a certain point, there's going to be many other applications for that don't have to do with cheesecake. The boss is going to go, hey, we need someone to work on Saturday. And everyone's going to think, fuck, I don't want to work on Saturday. I want that cheesecake. And then the other one's going to go, I know, I have dominion over myself. I know what to do. Okay. You know what? I can say yes to things, or no. I can say yes to things that are painful. I can say no to things I crave. I think we all know those people who don't really have much control over themselves. Like they just don't know how to put in those hours, or, you know, that thing where you get up in the morning and you're like, I'm not quite feeling it today. And they just go right back to bed and call in sick or whatever it is.
Right.
It doesn't serve them big picture. So not only would we have the byproduct of thinner people and healthier people, but we'd have people that had a little more resilience mentally. Who, of course, everyone wants I want a root beer every morning. I want a root beer with every meal.
That'd be awesome.
There's nothing better, and especially the high end stuff, like in
a
the
frosty
bottle
mug.
now. Yes, I want
Give me
one of
cream
those.
soda.
I want a cream soda and root beer with every fucking breath. But I have dominion over myself, and I think, unlike my friends I grew up with, I think it served me. I think I was able to then later on in life, when we would all work construction and they'd all go home and go, all right, we're going to drink some beers, I'd go, no, I'm going to my groundlings class.
Right.
And I think it was that little experience that enabled me to go do that. It's kind of why you want to hire handicapped people. Like they work harder.
It's funny you mentioned beers after all this, because I was literally 24 hours ago having a conversation with a good friend of mine, and how he just off the cuff was like, when's the last time you had a beer? I was like, I fucking haven't had a beer in a year and a half almost. I miss it every day. Like I cry. I love beer. Adam, you know how much I love beer. Like I love it. And but it's part of the discipline of, it's not on the table. No pun intended.
Yes, but don't you feel so much more well-rounded now than when you were giving in to yourself a lot?
Yes. The overall answer is
I don't
yes.
mean a year and a half ago. I mean like Fat Brian.
Yeah, 100%. When I lost the weight initially, I remember making a promise to myself. Sounds so fucking douchey, but literally I was like, I'll never put that weight back on. Whatever happens, I'll never put the weight back on. I was miserable when I was fat.
Sorry, Gina, one more.
Oh, right. Well, boy, oh boy, if this one wasn't written specifically for this show, I don't know what is. Variety.com reports that crew members from Ellen DeGeneres' long-running daytime talk show are very angry over their treatment from top producers amid this pandemic. And stay tuned for the end, because, of course, it has a little button. The core stage crew for the Ellen DeGeneres show, consisting more than 30 employees, received no written communication about the status of their working hours, pay, inquiries about their mental, physical health from producers over a month. This is according to two sources. The crew was further pissed by the show's recent hire of an outside non-union tech company to help DeGeneres tape remotely from her house in California. When production executives finally did weigh in, nearly all crew members were told last week to brace for a 60% reduction in pay, even as the show continues to air. Only 4 core members currently work on the remote version of the broadcast, and insiders say they find this treatment to be totally inconsistent with DeGeneres' daily message to her audience to be kind.
Be kind, I forgot.
Yep. Be kind to one another.
Starts with dancing, ends with be kind to one another.
On the other side of the spectrum, Jimmy Kimmel Live stagehands were paid from host Kimmel's own pocket during initial COVID-19 shutdowns. The two insiders familiar with the set told Variety since returning to the air, the network ABC's paying their full rates, and Jimmy covered it when they weren't.
Wow. Yeah, Ted Cruz says it wasn't actually from his pocket. Those were checks that were issued from a Jewish accountant.
Yeah.
Okay.
He never saw the money, and we went from one account.
No,
to
you're
another.
acting like he handed them the money. That was
this
just
is fake news.
This is a remote stranger cutting cold checks and putting them in the mail. That's not straight from his pocket.
So crass.
Okay. I was thinking about this, like with Ellen, and I kind of mean it, which is, dancing at the beginning and be kind at the end. And she's not that person, but she wants you to think she's that person. Like, the only other person who danced at the beginning of the show, Bill Cosby. That's right. If you watch the beginning,
that's right.
You want to have fun, get high and just watch the beginning of the Bill Cosby show. The mugging, like
every iteration.
How hard is he working to make you think he's different than what's in his soul?
Right.
You watch the beginning of that show, and it's like a guy couldn't express it. He couldn't tap dance more for you to think. Like, he puts on a sweater that looks like the Partridge Family bus, and then does this crazy pantomime, which is like the friendliest, nuttiest. I mean, it's like an infomercial for him being this person.
Yeah.
And if you think about it, you know, you don't, like, when I do a show or anyone does it, you wouldn't think like I have to be so saccharine sweet to everyone. They have to perceive me this way, unless there was something driving that.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
I don't want
Something
them to
covered.
discover this other side.
Subterfuge.
So my thing with Ellen is, I often think about Rosie's arc, and, she had the cutie patootie chub club, and now she's Rosie, but at least this is the real version of her.
Right. She's leaning in.
Maybe it's time for Ellen to come out again.
Oh,
Come out as mean. Come out as
It's
evil.
mean. It's mean. Oh, fucking own it. That's who you are. Like, there were two things you were hiding. One is your sexual proclivities. You came out. We accepted that. Now it's time to come out as a bitch. You got to come out as a mean person. That's fine. Hey, I'm not that nice.
She could be a trailblazer, man. Think about it. In this day and age, it comes out as mean. Like, fuck everyone being nice.
Well, I mean, Larry David's not that nice, and works
love
for him. And we love him. We love most about Larry David? Authenticity. That's all we like. That's all we don't even care. We just like that he is who he is, right? So I'm saying it might be time for a second coming out for Ellen, and I would applaud it. As a mean person, maybe it would give me the courage. Oh no, wait a minute.
Wait, you're already out.
You would embrace her.
Yeah,
I would embrace her.
You're on the cover of Mad magazine with 2 A's, like Glad.
Yeah, so come out for a second time. We encourage that, and I would be a big fan.
That's
all
great.
right. Let's bring it home, Gina Grad.
You got it. I'm Gina Grad, and that's the news.
Gina Grad. That was the news with Gina Grad.
All right, let me hit Bet Online. Nothing to bet on, right? Wrong. Bet Online has hundreds of events, games, props to wager on. They'll bring Vegas right to you, right online, poker and blackjack. Woo, diggity. You missed the NFL live daily. Madden is being played on 20 NFL 20 simulators, and you can wager on those. Survivor, Big Brother, American Idol. Even the Nathan's hot dog eating contest we were talking about before. You guys can tune in at the end of this podcast for Rob Sesternino's interview with Joey Chestnut and BetOnline's Dave Mason, and you can listen to that on the BetOnline Quarantine Challenge this week, and as well, or this week, BetOnline, our exclusive partner, Podcast One. Sign up for a free account with promo code Podcast One and have some fun while you're locked up. Visit BetOnline.ag. That's betonline.ag, and get the use the promo code Podcast One for your sign up bonus. All right, so Dennis Quaid in a very interesting, revealing one-on-one is coming up, so stay tuned for that. I want to thank Rob Freed for hopping on. TruNiagen.com. Avail yourself to some of that great product. And you can go to AdamCarolla.com and check out the book. The book's going to be, the audiobook's going to be done real soon. And you can pre-order the written book, I'm Your Emotional Support Animal. And check out all our movies on Netflix, and get the DVD at Chassis, CHASSY.com. Until next time, this is Adam Carolla for Rob Freed and Bald Bryan and Gina Grad saying stay tuned for Dennis Quaid.